Hello and welcome to Property Mastermind Podcast, episode 175, Bob Anderson and Hilary Sexton. Hey, today we're talking about assumptions. Assumptions about property and assumptions about people. And when you make assumptions and things go wrong, how bad things can get. And what you need to look out for. So really, we're covering off on a bit of due diligence, be that around people and be that around property. So let's jump on into episode 175. Hey, welcome to episode 175, Assumptions. Assumptions around property and assumptions around people. Bob, welcome.
Thanks. Great to be here.
We actually sat down and chatted and prepared for this week, didn't we? Usually it's a bit more of a sit down, I go, okay, you good? And he's, yep. But we had to unpack this because I suppose in some ways it's a little bit thought-provoking for people to realise what you need to follow up on. It's kind of a bit of that, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the follow-up front, Bob, as I do every week, and every week you go, why do I have to do that? What is it? What's your tip?
This tip relates to you.
Oh.
Because you just got back from New Zealand. So you went back 4 days back to NZ. Children, grandchildren, usual thing. My tip is this. If you're just going there for 4 days, try and keep to Australian time, even though it's 3 hours different in New Zealand from where we live.
Yeah, great tip, Bob. But
because if you don't, you'll come back here and start waking up at 3 a.m. every morning like you've been doing.
Yeah. I would love to do that, actually. That would be
easier said than done, though.
It is. I had a wee 3-year-old coming in and waking me up at 6:30 his time, which was 3:30 my time, and he doesn't understand no. So, yeah, I was up anyway. Anyways, thanks, though. I would do that.
Good tip.
Great tip.
Hard to do.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Well, let's give away the book. So this week the book goes to Mary Coutrist. You sent an email in asking about the upcoming 45-minute lunchtime session we're doing on property development principles and that you can't make it. So you're going to get that book and I will send you an email and we'll look forward to you hearing more about what we do and how we can help you. But anyway, while we're on that, I do need to tell people about it. So it's a 45-minute free session on the property development principles. It's everything you need to know to get started in property development. And we're going to be running one of these every few months from now on. But this is our first. So
different subject each time?
Oh, yeah. Different subject each time. You won't want to miss it. And if you want to find out how you can be on that, you need to head over to our Facebook page, Property Mastermind, and you'll find an Eventbrite link to hook up with that. So yeah, you need to get on that. It's going to be fabulous. It's our first one. You don't want to miss it. We've got quite a few people registered, so we'll look forward to seeing you then. And that is actually on the 21st. So that's next Thursday. Yep. Next Thursday, 21st of November 24. And we would love to see you on that free lunchtime 45-minute session. How good's that? I love those lunchtime sessions.
Me too.
Yeah, so good.
I'll have lunch after it.
Yeah, you best you don't have lunch during it. Anyway, Bob, let's get into it. Assumptions.
Yeah.
When we first came up with this, there's a reason for this podcast, which we'll get to in a wee bit. But we were reflecting, and there were so many.
When you start thinking about it.
Yeah, so many that we'd sort of had mentoring students, and you knew way more stories than I did around assumptions. But the one that came up for me immediately was the assumption that we knew someone in our circle who had a broker that they wanted to use. Do you want to do that story?
That one. Okay, so we did. We had somebody who was buying a site. Now the site consisted of a house on a lot, and the intention was to subdivide it into 2 lots. So 1 lot into 2 lots, and then build houses, 2 houses, 1 on each lot. That was the intention. So the first purchase was that. And what they did, contrary to what we teach, but, not everybody listens to what we teach.
That does happen, though. Why do people do that? They don't do what we tell them to do sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So they just went off. Now, this is a development proposition, okay? So the development is subdivision into 2 lots initially, 2 houses later. It's a development proposition.
It was a cracker site too. I remember we visited.
Oh, yeah, it's sad. So what they did, they went straight to their normal finance broker. Now, the finance broker they've used previously had found 2 investment properties for them.
So they had a relationship.
Financed them.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's fine. And that's what retail finance brokers do. They get finance for your house. They get finance for investment properties. They generally don't understand property development, most of them, a majority by far, and then they don't know what they don't know. And what happened is that he went to this particular potential developer, just went to his normal broker. And he shouldn't have. Should have gone to a broker who understands property development.
The one you told him to go to?
Yep. And look, along the way, he also started, because they had a little bit of time to settle, lodged a development application. So he lodged a development application before settlement. 6 days before, it might have been a little bit more than 6 days, the valuer for the financier did the valuation and immediately looked the site up on the council website and found out that a development application had been lodged. The developer then told the potential financier, a DA's been lodged. The financier said, this is a development proposition, you're not just buying a house, and killed the deal flat. Left him totally stranded with very little time, well, almost no time to organise anything else.
I think it was within, I remember, was it 2 or 3 days?
Yeah.
It was really close then.
Yeah, and there's no way you could pull that together so fast. So what happened? Lost the deal, and somebody else then took up the deal, obviously financed it correctly, subdivided into 2 lots, built a rooming house on each lot. And I often drive past that site.
Did they end up with 2 rooming houses?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So every time I drive along that road
Cringe.
and past that, I almost don't want to look left and see it because I know the history. I mean, good on the guy that or girl that did it, that did the development, financed it properly, and ended up with 2 rooming houses. But what went wrong? Well, in spite of what we say, they went through a broker who's just a normal retail broker, doesn't understand property development, made the
assumption.
They made the assumption he'd say the right story. And what he should have done is said, don't lodge the DA yet because I don't want the financier to understand that it is a potential development. We're just using it. We're just buying an investment property as far as the finance is concerned. All would have been okay, but it wasn't. So the assumption was that the broker knew what he was doing.
And he didn't.
The broker didn't know what he was doing.
Because it was the wrong broker, so they made the wrong assumption.
Yep.
What about the next one?
That's a costly one.
Oh, it was?
I mean, that costs potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost profit, but also the cash flow that flows from having 2 rooming houses here.
And then just think, I wonder what the broker said. Did he just say, oh, sorry, and carry on? Just crazy. The next one is, it's another story about a person listening or taking advice from somebody and made an assumption that they were correct, that they were telling the truth. And it was another student of ours, and he went to put an offer in on a property, and the real estate agent said, no, they're never going to accept that, so they didn't put it in. It didn't actually sell, but they waited a few months and looked it up, and it did sell eventually for the same price that he was putting the offer in. So this guy made the assumption that the real estate agent knew what the other people were thinking, as if anyone knows what anyone's thinking, hey? Another terrible assumption, which cost somebody a lot of money.
Yeah.
And what do you say? What does the real estate agent say? They do not care.
The real estate agent did the wrong thing because the real estate agent represents the seller. And they're obliged to present any offers, whether they think it's low or not, it's irrelevant. If somebody wants to make an offer, and by an offer I mean a written offer, not a verbal offer, they should take it to contract and present the contract. It's then up to the seller to either reject it, tear it up, or countersign it at a different price. But they're obliged to present all offers. They didn't. They said, no, the seller's not going to wear that.
Assumption.
Don't even bother. So the potential purchaser assumed, okay, that's the case. They're not going to take it. I won't even put a proper offer in. Walked away, and then sure enough, someone must have within, about, I think it was only, as you say, 2 months later.
I think it might even have been less than 2 months.
And the offer was accepted. And
he was gutted.
Yeah, because it was a good deal. It worked. It was a development site, so he had to get it at that lower price, not the price that he thought that the owner wanted. I
think in that situation, if you want to put an offer in, you need to press whether the real estate agent likes it or not, that they take it. Would you agree with that?
Well, they're bound to present all offers.
But they don't, do they?
Well, they should. I mean, that's part of their appointment. They're actually contravening their appointment when they don't.
Well, actually,
But they nearly always play the game like that. They play in the middle, a lot of them.
if I think of that conversation I had the other day with a mentoring student, he missed out because the real estate agent didn't get back to him. He made the assumption that she would get back to him on the next day. The house pretty much sold on the Sunday, went on the market Saturday, and he followed up. So it's the same thing. You just have to dot your I's and cross your T's, and you can't assume that somebody's got the credentials, has your best interest at heart, isn't having a busy day. You just have to follow up, don't you?
Well, the agent doesn't care who buys it. They get the same commission whoever buys it.
Yeah, exactly.
And look, even if it's multiple offers, they can take multiple offers in a hot market to a seller, and the seller can make the call based on whatever the offers are. Some of it's price, some of it's conditions, of time. There's a whole range of variables in there. When an agent takes it upon themselves to decide whether they should even present an offer or not, they're outside of their scope.
Yeah, they're out of their wheelhouse. Get back in. Yeah, okay, Bob, the next one...
Sounds like we don't like real estate agents.
Oh, no.
Which is not the case at all.
No.
We love them.
Yeah, of course. I've got some great real estate
Certain
agents.
ones, anyway.
Yeah. So the next one I want to talk about is an assumption that people make on properties, because I remember there's numerous of these, but my favourite one is a story that you tell about somebody who had four townhouses, was it? 4 townhouses, and everyone else in that area had put 4 townhouses on. So he thought that was going to be what he would do, and it made a tidy profit, didn't it?
Sure did.
You can finish
this
the story.
This one's out of the archives.
Yeah, no, but it's a great story.
This one goes back a while.
Yeah.
When the planning scheme in this particular city was different to what it is now. But what had happened is a site came on the market that was suitable for sure for 4 townhouses. And the reason I say that is it was zoned for townhouses. It was the right size. It was about 870 square metres, so it was certainly big enough to take 4 townhouses at the time, 4 2-storey townhouses. And so everybody was looking at it as a 4 townhouse site. And look, the asking price was pretty close to what it is for a 4 townhouse site. And I had a
What do you mean by that? There was pretty close. You mean
in value. What the seller was asking for is pretty close to what it was worth as a 4 townhouse site. We had a look at it. I had a look at it with this particular person, and I knew something about the town plan at the time, and the town plan was only relatively new. And what it said was this: it's a 2-storey area. However, if it adjoins a medium density site, in other words, a site where there already is townhouses, you can go to 3 levels. But if it adjoins a site that, say, has a house on it, you can only go to 2 levels. And so, guess what? This adjoined a site that on, if you like, the right-hand side was townhouses. So that means, you can go to 3 levels. But on the left-hand side of the site was a house, which means you can only go to 2. So what do you do then? Well, got a design done that was 3 levels. Imagine if you're standing in front of it and looking at it. 3 levels on the right-hand side of the building and 2 levels on the left-hand side. And then you drove underneath and went to the garage. So it ended up 3 stories and 2 stories, which satisfied the 2 stories adjoining the house and the 3 stories adjoining the townhouses next door. But the thing was, instead of getting 4 on, we got 7 on. So 7 3-bedders. Now, sure enough, 3-storey townhouses cost a bit more to build than 2-storey townhouses. But when you get 7 instead of 4, that's quite a big difference.
What was the profit increase relative to?
Well, I can remember the dollars, which it's a long time ago now, but it made probably at least 50% more profit.
Do you know what? You've never actually told that. I've never heard you tell it like that, where one side had 2 and the other side had 3. Or maybe I've heard this one at workshops a few times, but I haven't listened fully because I hear it too much.
When I say it at workshops, I often bring up a photo of it.
Yes, but I didn't realise it was the 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Wow.
And to look at it, it would never win an architectural award. Not that you ever want to do a development that does necessarily, but it wouldn't. But was in a good suburb. And it worked. And it was profitable, really profitable because of that. So
people had assumed that it was really only going to be 4.
Yeah.
And then you're like, hang on a minute, we can mix this up. So again, assumptions were made and they were incorrect, and seeing it
And it wasn't well known at the time because it had been a change in the new city plan, the town plan at the time that not many people knew about. So it was quite fresh and new. People would have become aware of that in time, and even these days, of course, that thing's changed. This is a while ago. You can't do that. You couldn't do that anymore. It's just that particular time, and but
there are often planning scheme changes, and being aware of them is not silly.
Not at all.
It can pay off.
Oh, it certainly can. Yeah, plenty of examples of that.
Okay, now I want to read the email, which this is what actually inspired this podcast today, because 2 podcasts ago, so episode 173, we interviewed Gary Martini, and Gary emailed afterwards, and I'll read you the email that he wrote because he wished he'd said this during the podcast, and I thought, how do we get this out so people know? And this is what inspired the whole topic today, because it's so easy to assume that somebody has had a privileged life, or when you hear a story, you wouldn't have realised that there was more to it. So I'm just going to read Gary's email. Hi, Hilary and Bob. Thanks for your time on Wednesday. It was fun. I hope I didn't ramble. Hilarious to find out that we were born on the same date, Bob. So Bob and Gary actually share a birthday. Hilary asked me at the end something like, is there anything you'd like me to pass on to someone wanting to go into property development? I was a bit blank and sort of struggled through the answer when it all had seemed so easy prior. Hilary, as soon as we hung up, I had the answer I should have replied with. It was included in my prior thoughts before recording, which I wanted to say, but under the direction of our conversation, it didn't come up. Because I had the opportunity to go through Sydney University and other football opportunities, listeners may feel I was a privileged fella, using my family background to progress, and I had pre-thought that other people may think that. I should and would have said something like, you can come from nowhere and be successful in property development. When I left university at age 21, I had $1,000 in the bank and 0 family financial backing. My mother brought me up, 5 children, on a pension, and though I never felt I missed out on anything, I had a wonderful upbringing. I had the drive for a better life. You need the hunger. Anyone can do it. Still have morals, be ethical and honourable, but drive hard for your goals. Guys, I know we've completed the podcast and you may even have edited it. If any or somehow you can add this as an anecdote, even say I missed this, I'd really appreciate it. My kids have had financial privilege start, but both strive for their own success because I have impressed similar to this anecdote to them. They can get out, achieve great things if they have hunger. I hope it's not too late, Gary. So that was the email that Gary sent in, and he really wanted people to know that anyone can do it, and it just wasn't given to him.
No. What a great mother Gary had.
Yes.
And kids too. It's 3 generations.
Yeah.
Hardworking.
So that's why we went with assumptions. People may have assumed that he was privileged, and it turned out he just worked really hard. And if you listen to the podcast, it was fabulous. And
yeah, definitely deserves his success.
Oh, heck yes.
And he got it.
He did.
On the football field and in property, but
and in other
had to
areas.
strive for it. The hunger to succeed.
So following that, then I got another email this week from somebody, and I replied to it. But he said, I get a few emails and have a few conversations. I don't always reply to everyone's email, but he said, why do you and Bob do what you do if you are so knowledgeable and so successful? Why are you still doing property development, and why are we still doing education? He did start with, great to see that you're keeping the property development community alive. And I replied back to him, and again, he made the assumption that I don't know what we should be doing. What else would we do? I'd probably play more golf, but you don't play golf. We'd be fishing more. But I just replied to him and said, that there's a thing called profit and passion, purpose and passion. We both have a passion for property development, but there's a big purpose behind what we do. And I wrote back and said, how lucky are we to be able to change people's lives? And even just the Gary Martini thing, saying to Bob, you just changed my life. And so many other people have said that. And the opportunity that we get to help people become financially successful, just all sorts of people, everyday people like you, me, the neighbour, like just everybody. And I think that when that becomes the reason that you do what you do, it's not so hard to do what you do. You actually like it. And adding to that, we also employ people. So we have staff who we all love it. It's a fun environment that we work in. We all have a great time, and we're sort of keeping the economy alive, I suppose. So that was the reason for that. And I thought he'd made an assumption, so that was the reason this word was kind of quite strong today, hey?
Yeah, it's a question I've often received over the years.
Yeah.
You know, and like we are developers, we develop property, but we also educate. And I think a lot of people are used to people that educate that aren't really property developers, or people that educate in lots of fields. You know, universities full of lecturers and professors who talk the theory but have never done the practice. And even in, shall I say, in property development education, there's plenty of people out there that teach that haven't really done it or done little to nothing. And that's just the way it is.
Seriously, last night, somebody sent me something. So they said it was a new Facebook ad of a new property development education company. It's an AI person, so you can actually replicate yourself. So I could actually replicate myself now, read a script terribly, and it would look like I'm doing it, but a little bit AI-ish. There's somebody with like not really them, and it's a new property development educator with their 12 steps, which I thought, awesome. Somebody's probably done it once, twice, 3 times. Just ripped off ours, who knows? But
you can do that now with AI.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, but anyway, it's funny. Well, it's sort of funny.
No, that's not funny. I just think how many people are going to get hurt believing in.
Well, they will. Do your own due diligence on your educator as well. But I mean, the point is we can do both. Why would we limit ourselves to just education and not do development, or develop and not do education if we love both? You know, I get more satisfaction out of what we do on the education front than I do on the property development front. The property development front makes plenty of money, and we're keeping lots of people employed, and it's great, you know, when the payday comes, and you know, that's all great, but it doesn't change lives. It keeps people employed, makes money for us, makes money for other people. That's all great. But in the property development education front, and Gary's a good example, but there's heaps and heaps and heaps of others.
My client this morning, 7 a.m, I ring a guy every Wednesday morning. He's in the mentoring program.
Yeah.
And that probably started about 4 weeks ago. He's reasonably new. He's straight on.
You've changed his life upside down in 4 weeks.
Yep, I have. I was like, what's next? Right, do that. He's similar to me, captain, so he's very goal-focused. He knows what he wants to get done, but he needs to have someone to show him what to do, tell him what to do, be accountable to, make it easy, not have to work out how to do something. I said, I can send you that. You just need to replicate this one, do this, do that. And then, you know, he's got the education side of it as well, and he's talking to Bob, Aaron, but having that, I just know what I've changed his life. It's just epic.
Well, in 18 months' time, he's going to be millions of dollars richer.
I know. I told him when he gets a helicopter, he's got to come and take me out for lunch. That's what I told him this morning.
Or go fishing like we do.
Yeah, I said, I want you to come take me out for lunch in your helicopter, because that's pretty much where he's heading, which is epic. And he's just a regular, everyday guy. Yeah. So good.
There used to be a Lotto ad, or I think it was Lotto or something, I don't know, whatever it was. There's a guy fishing from a helicopter.
Yes.
Yeah, so he can come and take me fishing in his helicopter.
Oh, okay. Well, I wondered where you were heading with that.
Yeah.
So, Bob, I remember it now. It's purpose over profit. I mean, profit's great, but it's it is a big purpose.
Yeah. I'd be happy to do either one of those, but the fact that we can do both is incredible.
Then I went on from that I remember we did an interview with Dan King, and Dan's in Victoria, and he was the same. He said he remembers standing, he loves property development, but he remembers standing outside one of his developments kind of with his hands on his hips thinking, I did that. He had satisfaction. I did that, and he was the first person that pointed out the whole. I employed all of these people for me. When he said, "I've created so many jobs. I've created a beautiful home," and when he did that, I thought, "Wow, Dan, that's epic."
He was so proud. I remember walking through one of his properties, and we even shot up some video footage, which could even be on our website. Who knows? But he was just so proud as he's walking around. You know, he said, "Oh, I can just see." He hadn't sold it. I think he sold it soon after. He said, I can just see the family here, you know, kids sitting up at the kitchen bench and somebody preparing food. Like he just visualised the whole family, and that, you know, they're going to grow up there and live there happily for many years. And he said, no, I'm creating this environment for them. And like, he was so proud, and he should be. And it's not something you often think about.
No. I suppose people think property developer just makes money. There's so much more to it. The employing of the people, and you've got to think the employing of the people starts with town planners and architects and engineers, but it also goes to office people and drawers and builders and tradies and house stagers and
people
real
that work
estate
in the
agents
carpet factory that makes the carpet that ends up in there.
Yeah, it just goes so big, and somebody's got to do it.
It opened my eyes that day talking to him. And I think more about it, like when we were in the duplex the other day and we're going through it, finally finished staged and looking at that, and I could just see, wow, yeah, people are going to love this for this reason and that reason, and all of that. It's great.
And in fact, while we're on that one, there was another wee assumption that happened there. I don't know if we talked about this last week. We may have. But anyway, we went to market and got an offer on the first day. So how good's that for what we wanted?
First open house.
First open house on the duplex. So we did a joint venture with some previous students from yesteryear. And yeah, so exciting. We're out for dinner and get the text there, contracts, and it's like, what? How good? Just went on the market today.
First open, 30 minutes open, boom, contract.
Nice. For what you're asking. That's so good.
Yeah, no offers, got full price.
But there were a little few hiccups at the end, and they were things like there was an assumption that the cleaning had been done, but the builder, not the builder on site, but the building company owner, he'd been sick with apparently COVID. But he'd been sick, so he didn't quite follow up to check that it had been done. So then I turn up, the stages are turning up because I wanted to get video footage of them staging. And I thought, hang on, this doesn't look clean. And everyone had just assumed that things had happened and they hadn't. And that's another sort of thing you have to follow up on, because it was nobody's fault really. We just assumed that it had all been done.
Well, that's it. The assumption was made that certain things would have already happened, and therefore the stages were booked on a particular date and time, and that was the wrong assumption.
One little thing went wrong. The builder was...
The domino effect.
Yeah, and it just cascaded. All it did was took the...
That's interesting, because that pushed back the open house by a week, and it was that day that person walked through and settled. Had it opened the week early, would they... Because they don't live in... locally.
No.
Would they have actually been there the week before to go through it?
Good point.
I don't know.
Or could there have been two people and they bid it against each other? You never know.
No, you never know.
No, it's really about just that. I think it's a due diligence, or like it's an I's and T's, follow up, check up. You've got to do the checkups. And that was like one of the mistakes we made.
Yeah.
And then I'm having a wee little, not meltdown, but I'm like, I'm sure this is not clean, running my hand over all the surfaces.
Oh, there's a few other things that hadn't been done as well, like the pool, remember?
Yes.
Hadn't been filled and cleaned, the swimming pool.
Yeah.
A whole range of little things, but
it got sorted. But just a reminder that you have to follow up and check, don't just assume that things are happening and they're being done. So, Bob, I reckon we've probably covered off enough on people making assumptions. And really, if we were to take away some key points, what would they be for you from this podcast?
Don't make assumptions. Check them out. Like, one you just mentioned there, everyone assumed that, the builder had finished, everything was clean.
So, Bob, that's that we didn't quite follow up on that work. But something we did really well recently where we did follow up was we also have a couple of industrial developments underway, and we had to walk away from one. Oh, you explain that one.
Yeah, well, we've got two that we're acquiring now to do, but there was a third one in between the two, actually. And what we were doing, we were buying a block of land from a developer who was subdividing an industrial estate. So subdividing it up into lots. So he'd already done that. The roads were in. Didn't have any titles at this point. But we went to contract, subject to titles issuing and a due diligence clause. And we just assumed, well, the assumption was that the property developer
would know what he's doing.
Would know what they're doing if they're doing an industrial development. And during our due diligence period, we were finding things that suggested that they didn't know what they were doing. One of them was their lawyer. Their lawyer completely messed up we had an option agreement that we're entering into, which then converted into a contract at a certain point. And they had a lot of trouble trying to pull an option together. And what happened is our lawyer ended up having to deal with their lawyer. And
to tell them what to do.
Who wasn't familiar with options, and there was a whole range of things. And our lawyer said, this other lawyer is really a conveyancer. So they're lost. They're not a property lawyer. And I'm thinking, why would a subdivider of an industrial estate be using a conveyancer as a property lawyer? Because they're not. And it just got worse from there. Then we discovered that the actual developers were a group of people who really didn't have much experience at all, as we found out. And Then we looked at the dates of things and how long things had been taking, and their development permits, how long they took. And then we discovered there was holes in the whole story, and the contract referred to a covenant. They couldn't produce a copy of a covenant because they'd never done one. And look, it just got to a point where it was a joke. The real estate agent who introduced us was so embarrassed because he was representing the seller, and we were just getting sick and tired of paying our lawyer to educate their lawyer, to doing our due diligence that we couldn't correctly do because there was holes all over the place. And we'd already spent money on doing some things ourselves, which we're happy to do, but we had to get a survey done for a particular reason as well, to make sure we could get the entry that we wanted to get on. And we'd spent a bit of money. We spent about $8,000 of our own money. And in the end, hey, we made a decision.
Walk away.
This is just too ridiculous, and it's getting too hard.
They were incompetent.
And what else don't we know that they don't know that hasn't yet reared its head? And so we're okay. $8,000, that's okay. That's, price of doing business. Much cheaper to walk away than just continually get problem after problem.
Then make something happen that could end up being, or would likely to be a lemon. Yeah, so the assumption, really what we took away from that was that just because they were developers of something quite big didn't mean they knew what they were doing, and they had just tried to cut so many corners, hey?
Yeah. And the assumption was wrong. They were fools.
Yeah.
And we told them, and we pulled out. And thank goodness we did.
So, Bob, let's just summarise. What would the takeaways be from this week's episode?
Well,
I think there's a few nuggets in there. I think you've sneaked in a few nuggets. People will listen and go, ooh.
Well, there's plenty of examples of assumptions you shouldn't make, but I guess, make as fewer assumptions as you can. Do things accurately. Like, if you're doing a feasibility, don't assume I can get this much when I sell it. We didn't talk about feasibilities, but all due diligence. Don't just assume things. Check them and make sure. So whether it's a feasibility, whether it's due diligence, don't just assume, the agent said he can get this much. Well, can they really get that much? And you're going to take the word of one agent. Let's check it out. Same thing, we talked about a broker. Well, don't assume that if you go to the wrong broker, they're going to help you. I mean, no. If you've got an offer to put in, don't assume that the agent really understands what they'll take. Like assumptions,
yes.
Just when you're looking at anything and it is an assumption, really question it.
Yeah.
And say, well, is it an assumption? How can I actually get to the root of this thing? So it's no longer an assumption, but a fact. And as much as possible, sure, sometimes we have to make assumptions because we just aren't in a position to really qualify something. But if we are, then don't take the assumption, qualify it.
So both in property and people,
never
assume you know what's happening. Find out as much as you can. And you wrote down this before we started, Bob. You said there's no easy road. You've just got to do the work. You have to do the work. There's no free ride into this. There's no free
Silver
lunch.
bullet into property development.
There's not. You just got to do the work. It's so worth it. And like we said, you can make money. You can have other reasons for doing it that make you feel really good. But you've just got to do the work, which means I's and T's and doing your due diligence on everything, just following up and checking and making sure that people are doing their jobs. So, Bob, thank you. I saw you had quite a bit of energy in this podcast today, so obviously checked off a few important boxes for you.
I just started my head spinning about stories. I could go on for days and days about stories.
Yeah, well, 40 years later in property development, one would think there's a few in there.
That's what our 3-day workshop's about. I could just keep throwing in examples and stories. That's why, I'm still excited coming out of our workshop, which is probably 3 weeks ago.
Oh, just reminder that next Thursday, the 21st of November, 12 o'clock, that's Brisbane time, so Sydney, Melbourne, 1 o'clock, we've got our free 45-minute training session on getting started in property development, and it's the first of our 2 monthly series. I think the next one's actually February because it's a bit close to Christmas, but you'll want to jump in on that and head over to Property Mastermind Facebook page and you'll find an Eventbrite link. Or just if you can't find it, just message us from there or something and we'll get one to you. But otherwise, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode. We certainly enjoyed recording it for you. We'll catch you next week.
Bye now.
Bye.